Good afternoon, everyone. Make sure we get that height right. First, I'd like to say thank you to our conference organizer. Thank you to ARM. We appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to give our presentation today. And secondly, I want to thank everyone in the audience. Thanks for taking the time to join us for this presentation. I hope to provide you with some valuable information that you can take back to your supply chain. For those of you who are not familiar with World Courier, we're a specialty transportation provider, and we handle the door-to-door delivery of time-critical and temperature-sensitive shipments. Now, you might be sitting here thinking, what's a logistics provider doing at a regenerative medicine conference? Well, from our experience in working with cell and gene therapy companies who are our customers, we understand how integral the supply chain is with ensuring that the patient receives their therapy in perfect condition. So in this presentation, what I'd like to do is give you an overview of World Courier services and how we're working with cell and gene therapy companies to mitigate risk within their supply chain. A little bit of background for World Courier. I've been with World Courier for over 10 years now, and just over 4.5 years ago, we were acquired by AmerisourceBergen. And AmerisourceBergen is one of the world's largest pharmaceutical sourcing and distribution services company throughout the world. And this has been really exciting because not only can we focus on the door-to-door delivery and the physical handling of our customer shipments, but especially in the cell and gene therapy space, we're able to provide support that goes beyond commercialization and some of the services that I'll discuss later on. So I wanted to kind of give a broad view of the transportation world and how does specialty transportation providers, which is synonymous with specialty couriers, how do they fit into the cell and gene therapy world? And what I did was I put together a transportation pyramid. And I'm not going to go into the minutia of each individual level of the transportation pyramid, but I did want to illustrate that you start at the bottom of the pyramid and you find what's the slowest and also the most economical way to transport something from point A to point B, and that's ocean freight. And then as you ascend in the transportation pyramid, you'll find that you receive a higher level of service from your carrier, and so that means shorter transit times, better flexibility with temperature control, better chain of custody, and enhanced communication, until finally you reach the top of the transportation pyramid where you see the specialty courier. Now, most people are probably familiar with some of the transport companies that are on the lower, or I should say the second and third level of the transportation pyramid. You've probably heard of express companies like FedEx, DHL, and UPS. And these companies are excellent, and they are fit for purpose for a lot of different types of shipments. In fact, prior to coming to World Courier, I worked for FedEx Ground as a manager, so no doubt their services are excellent. However, in the case of cell and gene therapy shipments, where you have shipments like autologous cell therapies, where the product is derived from the patient's own cells, and it's very important that they receive the exact product that goes back into them, chain of custody is very much a concern. And so our customers work with us because they're concerned with integrators and express carriers with their business model where they consolidate bulk amounts of shipments at warehouses and then sort them through a large hub facility in Memphis or Louisville and out to the final destination. With a specialty courier, we take a more personalized approach. We utilize commercial airlines that allow us to transport our customer shipments from point A to point B directly without having to go through a hub and sort facility. And so at the end of the day, what this translates into is shorter transit times for limited lifespan product, better temperature control and the ability to replenish refrigerants as needed, enhanced communication for better visibility throughout your organization, and then, of course, chain of custody and having full records and documentation. What makes World Courier unique in the specialty courier space is our resources. So specifically, we have over 150 company-owned offices in over 50 different countries throughout the world. Now, it's all well and good for me to say we have X number of offices, but at the end of the day, what does that mean to you as a cell and gene therapy company? Well, what it means is that if you work with a transport partner that doesn't have company-owned resources in the locations that you're shipping to and from, that company is going to be forced to outsource that work to a secondary agent who may or may not have the same quality standards as the transport partner who you thought you were giving your shipment to. And to use the football analogy, anytime you have a handoff in your supply chain, or when a company outsources work to a secondary agent, that's a handoff, you increase your possibility for a fumble, or in this case, a supply chain failure. So World Courier is really taking it into our business model to invest in our resources so that we help our clients mitigate risk in their supply chain. So cell and gene therapy is not new to World Courier. We've been handling these shipments since the 1980s. In fact, we are working with just about 55% of all companies involved in gene therapy development, as well as 45% of companies that are involved with cell therapy development. And we think that we have a lot of experience to offer for companies that are engaging in this space. There's a lot to learn and a lot to share in this context. So how hard can logistics be? It seems so simple to get something from point A to point B, but I can tell you, especially in cell and gene therapy, we have a lot of different challenges that we have to address for our customers. So for the most part, if we're handling an apheresis shipment or a finished drug product shipment, a lot of times we're talking about limited lifespan and tight transit time requirements, anything ranging from 18 to 36 hours, or the product might be deemed unusable. So you need to plan for that in advance. How are you going to maintain that timeline? Also, I mentioned earlier about the importance of the chain of custody as it relates to not only autologous cell therapies, but also allogeneic, where you want to have clear shipment records to trace the origin back to the donor. These are things that our customers are concerned with. And then also, we're able to maintain the temperature of our customer shipments. So whether it's providing a pre-qualified box for 2 to 8 apheresis samples, or deep frozen shipments sent in a liquid nitrogen dry shipper for finished drug products, we help our customers with those particular challenges. Also, enhanced visibility is something that's very much a concern of our customers. We have one particular customer we're working with now, and they have a therapy that they're currently developing here in the US, and it'll extend into Europe at the end or beginning of 2017. But essentially what they have is a situation where they send their product to a patient's location, and they have a contract specialist who then administers that therapy to the patient. And these contract specialists aren't based at a hospital or a receiving location where the shipment's ultimately delivered. They have to travel to that location. And so for us, that means we need to coordinate tightly with them to ensure that if there's any deviation to the shipment schedule, that they know as soon as possible so they can let their specialists know. And then to top it off, if those challenges weren't enough, we also have customers that need to send their cell and gene therapy products internationally. And so that brings into context, what are the regulatory requirements? How are you going to manage customs clearance so that you can still meet the transit time requirements? So one of the things I wanted to point out that I think is interesting, especially for autologous cell therapies, is the supply chain in terms of the structure and design. If we think about traditional therapies and pharmaceuticals, the clinical and commercial supply chain can look vastly different. Obviously, as you reach the commercial stages of development, most times you're using a wholesaler or a third-party distribution partner to manage distribution of your product. But with the autologous cell therapies, the clinical and commercial supply chain are virtually the same. And so that's why we think that it's important for your transport partner to not only think about how they're going to manage the door-to-door delivery of your product during clinical stages, but how are they going to set you up for success during commercial stages? And I'll talk about that a little bit later as to what we've done to support our customers beyond commercialization. So what could possibly go wrong? When you're sending a product from point A to point B, from doing this for over 10 years, there are many things that can go wrong. All we have to do is look towards the volcanic eruption that disrupted European airspace some years ago. And I'll never forget, I was on our operations team at the time. The airspace in Zurich, Switzerland, and Lisbon, Portugal were open, so we were able to route our customer shipments to those airports and then utilize our ground network throughout Europe to get these shipments delivered. And every year we have, it seems like being born and raised in the East Coast, we call it a snowmageddon snowstorm that will impact our customer supply chain. So in those cases, we have to think about how are we going to route our customer shipments to ensure that they don't get delayed by the snowstorm. So all of these things really lend themselves to proper planning in the supply chain. In my opinion, the difference between a successful shipment that's delivered within the required temperature range versus a shipment that goes out of range is the planning phase. So you want to sit down with your transport partners and you want to understand, can they help you supply a pre-qualified packaging option? Are they able to supply and also email you the temperature results to ensure that your product stayed within the required temperature range? And are they able to anticipate possible challenges in the supply chain before they happen and can disrupt your supply chain? So, in my opinion, one of the things that's also important to note is that when you work with a transport provider, I think it's really an organizational buy-in that you need to have, especially with the cell and gene therapy space. You want your transport provider to have an understanding of just how critical these shipments are. You know, we're on the phone with customers and they talk about if there's a delay with their apheresis shipment, there's a possibility they might not even have time to go back in and to get another apheresis product back to the manufacturing facility. We also hear about how expensive these therapies can be, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So with that being said, you want to work with partners that understand this, that have experience doing this, that have SOPs in place of how they're going to manage emergency situations and have contingency plans. And also we work with our airline partners to find the highest level of services that will ensure our customer shipments get the highest level of loading on the flights and in some cases enhanced visibility just because of the importance of these shipments. One of the key factors related to transport is the subject of quality. So anyone that has been involved with clinical or commercial distribution in the EU is probably familiar with the EU GDP directives. And for us and our customer base, we've seen this as an area where customers are looking at their supply chain closely and wanting to understand, how is my shipment being handled, who's handling it, and what are the quality standards. And so for World Courier, we had the vision that regulatory scrutiny was only going to increase as time goes by. And so what we did was we developed a total quality program that we call GXP. And GXP is based on the guidance documents from GCP, GDP, GMP, and GSP. And so for virtually everything that we do, we have a standard operating procedure, and it's what it allows us to do is offer a consistent level of service, whether you have a pickup in India, a pickup in Ukraine, or a pickup here in the U.S., we're all operating off the same standard operating procedures. And I think this is very important to ensuring the success of your shipments. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier, what's unique about World Courier and being owned by AmerisourceBergen is that we have our customers' end game in mind. We know that obviously the door-to-door delivery during clinical stages is important, but we also want to make sure that we're supporting our customers for successful commercialization. And so what we've done is through AmerisourceBergen Specialty Group, we're able to offer our customers services that are related to patient scheduling, which is absolutely critical for autologous cell therapy treatments, also reimbursement and market access support as well. So these are some of the areas where we've really focused on it, and we think that we can provide a comprehensive solution to our cell and gene therapy customers to ensure that they have really the most successful success with their journey through the commercial supply chain as possible. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to stop by the World Courier booth. I would love to talk to you.